Of the hundreds of people standing in the cafeteria of Crossler Middle School on May 30th, 2014, I knew I was probably the youngest. I was 9 years old, and the only reason I was skipping a day of 4th grade was that my Aunt Sue taught at Crossler, and she and my mom thought I'd be interested in the man who was there to speak, Alter Wiener, a Holocaust survivor. They were right. Alter Wiener was famous around the Portland, Oregon metro area for sharing his experiences and educating people of all ages about the Holocaust. Aunt Sue had helped organize the event, and she'd saved me and my mom seats in the first row. When we reached our chairs, I sat down, adjusted my glasses, and looked just ahead of me. I'd finished Alter's memoir that week. My mom had bought it for us to read in advance of seeing him. But here he was, real and only a few feet away. He was slender and elderly and wore a dark suit and tie. His white hair hung in wisps at the sides of his head. His mouth was closed tight, and his dark, piercing eyes scanned the crowd. Next to him on the podium sat a water bottle and a laptop. I'd never met a Holocaust survivor. Alter had written that Western Oregon didn't exactly have large communities of European Jewish immigrants, but Mom had told me about the Holocaust when I was in 1st grade. I was barely 6, and a big part of her worried that the subject would really upset me. But a bigger part of her thought it was important for me to understand even the worst parts of human history so I could learn from them. She described how she, Aunt Sue, and my grandparents had taken a trip to Germany when she was 10 and Sue was 12. They'd traveled 10 miles outside of Munich, Germany's 3rd largest city, to visit the concentration camp Dachau. She told me seeing the cramped barracks and the memorials to the 41,500 people who'd been murdered inside the camp's walls has haunted her since then. But after that trip, she vowed to become a better, more compassionate person, something she wanted me to grow up to be. When we forget about history, Claire, Mom said, we're doomed to repeat it. I want you to understand that hate and intolerance led to millions of people being killed during World War II, and that should never happen again. When Alter Wiener stood up carefully that day and began to speak, it was clear he had the same goal my mom had, to talk about history so that we could avoid repeating it.
What I'm going to tell you is not pleasant, but it's a very true story,
he said in his heavy Polish accent.
I have no reason to exaggerate. I am not an actor.
Alter was 87, which was about 10 years older than my grandparents were at the time. His movements were slow and deliberate, and his body tilted slightly to one side. He was also short, but he didn't look frail or weak. In fact, he delivered his words so confidently and steadily that it was hard to think of him as anything but strong. There was something powerful inside him that had held him together through incredibly brutal times.